Hey guys, welcome back to another Clash Royale video, and today we're going to be talking about the next round of balance changes in Clash Royale. We do a video like this near the end of every month where I go ahead and give you guys my wish list of what I want to see buffed or nerfed in the next balance update. However, we're doing things a bit differently today than my previous videos. Normally, we have gameplay running in the background, but today, everything is backed up by numbers. Today's video is powered by the website RoyaleAPI.com, which is a fantastic website for finding good decks and finding the best cards in the game. Now, when is the next balance update? Well, it's always the first Monday of every month after the season reset, which makes Monday, November the 5th, the next day of balance updates. I wouldn't be surprised if next Friday, November 2nd, we got the actual balance update list. So let's go ahead, you guys, dive into my buff or nerf wish list. Spoiler alert, guys, my buff list is a lot bigger than my nerf list. I always think it's a lot more fun to buff a card than it is to nerf a card. So the first card here on my buff wish list is the Royal Ghost, guys. The Royal Ghost is an insanely strong card right now in the game. Right now, in my opinion, it is the best troop card in Clash Royale, hands down. Now, here's the thing. I like the Royal Ghost, guys. I think it's a very cool card, and I'm glad that it's in the meta. However, it is an absurdly strong card right now, and the numbers don't lie. Like, look at this. Right now, in grand challenges in the past 7 days, the Royal Ghost has a 36% use rate and a 57% win rate. That is astronomically high, guys. Like, right now, that is the single most highest performing troop card in Clash Royale. Like, almost every single meta deck in the game uses the Ghost. It is what I would say a broken card right now. With that being said, personally, I do enjoy using the Royal Ghost. I think it is a really cool card. However, the numbers don't lie, and it would be very justified if it did get hit with a nerf. I would be sad if it was nerfed. However, it is a very strong card. Now, the next nerf on my nerf list here, guys, there's only 2 cards that I want to see nerfed, and that will be the Ice Wizard. I know many of you guys will disagree with me on this. The numbers for the Ice Wizard aren't crazy high. Like, it has a 16% use rate and a 50% win rate, which is perfectly healthy. Like, it's almost the exact same as the Electro Wizard, which I consider to be a perfectly balanced card. However, with that being said, personal opinion and bias right here, I find facing off against Ice Wizard decks all the time extremely frustrating. It is a kind of very frustrating card to deal with because it slows everything down so much, especially when they have like Tombstone and NATO and Ice Wizard in every deck. Like, just literally just watching your giant, whatever you do, just be so slow and so distracted. It's such a frustrating thing to deal with. I think they should revert the buff they did to the Ice Wizard back in the October balance update. I know many of you guys won't agree with that, which is fine. I just personally find the Ice Wizard to be a frustrating card to deal with. It is a cool card. It is a very cool legendary card, and it was perfectly healthy before the buff in October. I just kind of see it a bit more often than I would prefer. It's so slow and defensive. It kind of just makes for overall like a slower gaming experience. Kind of just like a personal opinion over there. Now, that is the end of my nerf wish list. You're probably surprised that it's so short. However, like I said before, I think buffing cards is a lot more fun than nerfing them. So let's go ahead here and dive into my buff wish list. Number 1 card here, guys. I'm sure nobody is surprised to hear me say this, and that is the Royal Recruit. Right now, literally one of the worst cards in the game. Honestly, without being too harsh here, I think the whole like situation of the Royal Recruits, their release, their nerf, etc., etc., it's all a very kind of messy situation, you know? So here they are. They have a 0% use rate and a 36% win rate. Extremely low numbers. One of the worst cards in the game, with only the heal spell being lower. The recruits, guys, they were released in way back in July, and they're still one of the worst cards in the game. Like, I said it before, I'll say it again. They should have been nerfed to 7 Elixir in the beginning. Now, obviously, hindsight is 2020, and you never really know about these things to begin with. So I understand why they were nerfed to 8. I honestly just feel like they've had so much time now, so many opportunities to change them back to 7. However, the Remham, who is the main guy that does balancing at Clash Royale, he did come out on Twitter the other day and said that they will not be buffing the recruits in the November balance update. Basically, he kind of said that because Clash Royale League World Finals are in December, they don't want to risk having certain cards be kind of like overpowering for the biggest grand finale tournament in their season, which I perfectly understand why. I get it. I understand why they are not buffing recruits in November. However, they should have been buffed months ago. Like, we shouldn't be in this situation to begin with. If they would have been buffed back in October instead of the Ice Wizard buff, which wasn't needed, then if they were too strong, we would have the November balance update to go back on to nerf them if needed. They should have been buffed so many months ago, because now here we are. The card was released in July, and they won't see a buff until December. That is half a year. That is literally half of a year to finally bring a card back into the meta. Now, like I said before, I understand why they aren't buffing them in November because of the CRL final tournament. I get that 100%. I understand. They just should have been buffed like months ago. Now, the next card here, guys, on my buff wish list is right here, the Goblin Giant. Now, this is a pretty interesting card because it actually has a very impressive win percent at 58%. Now, I did a video on this card about maybe a week and a half ago, and I was very surprised with how well the Goblin Giant did in that video. It was using a Goblin Giant Sparky deck, which many pros are using, which I think is one of the reasons why the win percent is a bit higher, is because so many pros are using it. But there are some pretty cool things you can do with the Goblin Giant that you can't do with another win condition in the game. For example, defending a graveyard. The Goblin Giant is literally the perfect defense against a graveyard because it's spell resistant. You can't poison, you can't fireball, you can't zap the Spear Goblins onto the Goblin Giant back. It is the perfect defense against a graveyard because then afterwards you have the Goblin Giant for a counter push. So it's a pretty cool card. However, in my experience, I feel like the Goblin Giant isn't quite as rewarding for getting to the tower as it should be. I think the Goblin Giant needs a slightly faster initial attack speed. That's it. Just a faster first attack. That is all of the buff that I would give for the Goblin Giant. Go ahead, guys. Try it out yourself. Play with the Goblin Giant card. Watch it when it goes to a tower. I feel like it has a kind of like an awkwardly slow initial attack speed. So that would be the buff for that card that I would do. Now, the next card here on my buff wish list, many of you guys have already heard my ideas for this card, and that right here is the Giant Skeleton. I think the Giant Skeleton is a really cool card in the game. However, the problem is when you have the Giant Skeleton like in the meta, it's such a defensive card that it leads to a lot of draws. My number one idea for the Giant Skeleton, which many of you guys have already heard, is to kind of redesign the card altogether and make it a win condition. Make it only target towers or buildings, and that way you can build an entire deck around the Giant Skeleton. Obviously, you would have to reduce the damage the Death Bomb does to compensate for targeting only buildings. I would also increase the elixir cost of the Giant Skeleton to 7 elixir, and that way it's a bit different than the Goblin Giant at 6 and a bit different than the regular Giant at 5. Now, if the idea of changing the Giant Skeleton into a win condition is too crazy, I would just say either buff its health, buff his damage, or buff his attack speed. The numbers don't lie, guys. A 27% win rate in grand challenges. The Giant Skeleton is desperately in need of a buff, But like I said before, because it is such a defensive card, similar to the Ice Wizard, if Giant Skeleton was in the meta, it would be a very frustrating card to deal with because it's so defensive, it's so slow, it's not really a good counter pushing card that you would have a lot of games end in draws, which is why I suggest the idea of making it a win condition. What it loses on defense, it gains in offense. Now, the next card here, guys, on my buff wish list over here will be the Sparky. Now, I know already many of you guys are shaking your heads at me saying the Sparky doesn't need a buff at all, Shane. However, with the newest release of the Electro Dragon, we have yet another card in the meta that is a very hard counter for Sparky. I honestly believe the Sparky could use a bit of a buff to compensate for the Electro Dragon release, either more health or maybe a bit of a faster attack speed. I don't know. I just feel like this card could use a small buff as well. Now, the next card here, I'm pretty scared to mention because I already know many of you guys will be very angry as soon as I suggest this buff. I can already see the dislike button being spammed right now, but that card, of course, is the Hog Rider. Guys, the Hog Rider needs a buff. I know many of you guys right now are commenting, Shane, it doesn't need a buff. It is insanely broken. It needs a nerf, if anything. However, like I said before, guys, the numbers don't lie. Look at this. The Hog Rider only has a 32% win rate. That is very, very low. The Hog Rider is a pretty weak card. Surprise, surprise, guys. The Hog Rider is actually a pretty weak card. Compare it to the regular Giant that has a 49% win rate. The Lava Hound, also a win condition, has a 58% win rate. The Royal Giant has a 53% win rate. The Hog Rider, guys, is very low right now compared to the other win conditions. For example, Royal Hogs over here, 57% win rate. The Battle Ram over here, 53% win rate. The numbers do not lie. The Hog Rider, guys, could use a buff. I know many of you guys think it is an overpowered card, but it's not. It's not, guys. It really could use a buff. It used to be one of my favorite cards in the game, but right now, like literally there's only like 1 or 2 decks that are actually like really viable with the Hog Rider. Definitely, I would give it a buff over there. I know, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, guys, for even saying that idea of buffing the Hog Rider. I know many of you guys are upset right now. I'm sorry. However, the numbers don't lie. Look at it right, guys. Look at it right here. 32% win rate. That is very, very low. Now, moving on, guys. The next card over here on my buff wish list is the Mega Knight. The Mega Knight, in my opinion, 38%. That is very low. Just like Hog Rider, that is a very low win percentage, which is pretty surprising because you have, for example, Bait is pretty popular right now. Goblin Gang, Spear Goblins, etc., etc. You have Royal Hogs being popular. The Mega Knight should be a much more popular card than it is right now. Here's the funny thing, guys. Last month for the October balance update, they came out and said that the Mega Knight is healthy and will not be getting buffed in October. However, they then went and buffed the Ice Wizard, which was already a very good card. Like, it already had high win percentage and a good use percentage before the October balance update, but they buffed it anyways. And at the same time, they said Mega Knight was healthy. Once again, guys, numbers do not lie. 38% win rate with the Mega Knight. It was nerfed pretty hard way back in February of this year, and I think it's only gotten one small buff since then. I could be wrong, but I definitely feel like Mega Knight could use a buff as well, especially to help counter the Royal Hog meta. Now, obviously, part of the reason why the Mega Knight use rate and win rate is so low is because of these two cards up here, guys. The P.E.K.K.A. is popular right now, and it does so well versus Mega Knight, and also the Prince being so popular. Those two cards right there, I feel like are a pretty good reason as to why the Mega Knight is so low right now. However, I don't really ever see the P.E.K.K.A falling out of the meta. So I do feel like the Mega Knight could use a buff, especially to help counter the Royal Hogs. Now, moving on here, guys, next idea over here is the Inferno Tower. Pretty low, 32% use rate, 3% win rate. Not too sure what the best way to buff it is, but the numbers are pretty low as well, and I could feel like it could use a buff as well. The last two cards over here on my buff wish list, way down here, guys, are these two skeletons over here, the Bomber and the Bomb Tower. The Bomber has a very low win rate, one of the lowest win rates in the entire game. And obviously the Bomb Tower has a very low use rate as well. So in my opinion, both of these cards could use a buff. The Bomber could use a big buff, especially because it would help counter the Royal Hog meta. So that is the last two cards on my buff wish list, Bomber and the Bomb Tower. I have three cards here that I want to finish off by mentioning, because you might be wondering what about these cards. Number one is the Royal Hogs themselves, guys. I know right now a lot of people consider the Royal Hogs to be an absolutely broken, overpowered card. But, take a look at the numbers. The Royal Hogs have a 14% use rate and a 57% win rate. Now, obviously, that's high. Obviously, it's a good card. But looking at the Hunter over here, the Hunter has a 59% win rate. When's the last time you've heard someone say, nerf the Hunter? Never. Really never. The Hunter isn't, in my opinion, an overpowered card, yet it has a higher win percentage than the Royal Hogs. What I would prefer they did was, instead of nerfing Royal Hogs, I would say buff the counters, buff the Mega Knight, buff the Bomb Tower, buff the Bomber, buff some of the splash damage counters to the Royal Hogs instead of nerfing the Royal Hogs directly. The next card over here that I want to mention, guys, you might be very surprised to see it in this video at all, and that is the Barb Barrel. The Barb Barrel finally has some time to shine in the meta. However, it's no secret that right now, after the October balance update, the Barb Barrel story is everywhere. Almost every deck in the game is now using the Barb Barrel instead of the log. Look at these numbers over here. 58% win rate and a 31% use rate. It has a higher win percentage right now than both the log and the Zaspel. Look at this, crazy how strong and how good this Barb Barrel is. However, with that being said, I do not want a nerf for the Barb Barrel. We finally have this card in the meta for 1 month. What I would do is I would wait 2, maybe 3 more months to see if the Barb Barrel usage standardizes. And honestly, kind of just give it some time in the meta. Obviously, it's a good card right now. It's strong. The numbers are high, but it's only been in the meta for a month. Give it some time. Let people have some fun with the Barb Barrel before considering nerfing it. Now, the last card here, the second last card here that I want to mention is the Freeze Spell. Now, once again, they did tweet earlier on that the Freeze Spell is on their agenda, but it won't happen until at least December. The Freeze Spell is a pretty interesting card. It's one of the only cards in the game right now that is actually different at tourney standard than it is at max level gameplay. A max level freeze is disgustingly broken. Like, it lasts so long. It's such an easy card to use. However, at tourney standard, the freeze is so short, it's almost never worth using. That is a problem, guys. Almost all of the other cards in the game perform the exact same at tourney standard as you do at max level gameplay. For example, Mini P.E.K.K.A will always one-shot an equal level Musketeer, whether it's max level or tourney standard, but the Freeze Spell is so short tourney standard and so long at max level gameplay. I have no idea at all how to fix this card. In a perfect world, it would last the exact same time at tourney standard than it does at max level gameplay. But how would you do that? Obviously, you have to upgrade something. There has to be some reason for upgrading the card. My kind of idea here is a band-aid fix not a permanent solution. But what I would do, at least temporarily, is increase the base duration of a level 1 free spell and then decrease how much extra time is added per level. And that way what you do is you increase the duration of a tourney standard freeze, but you decrease the duration of a max freeze to make it kind of more similar. However, it's not a perfect solution because there still would be a bit of a difference, which obviously isn't ideal at all. They want the game to have the exact same interactions at max level and tourney standard, but just a small temporary solution. Now, the last card here that I want to mention is the newest card in Clash Royale, and that is the Electro Dragon. First of all, how did you guys do in the Electro Dragon challenge? Did you get at least 6 wins and unlock the new card early? I haven't got 12 yet. I hope you did. But as long as you get 6 wins, you do get the new card early. Let's go ahead here, guys, and take a look at the numbers of the Electro Dragon. Obviously, it's only been out for 1 day. So we can go ahead and change our time over here to 1 day. But take a look at the numbers of the Electro Dragon, guys. Right now, one of the strongest cards in the game. 26% use rate and a 71% win rate right now in grand challenges. Like, it is a very strong card. Now, obviously, it is a new card in the game with a unique mechanic. So, in my opinion, the reason why the win rate is so high, well, for 2 reasons. Number one, the only people using it right now in grand challenges are people that got 12 wins in the challenge and got to tourney standard, which means they're obviously better players, which is why the win percentage is higher. Number 2, it is a new card with a new mechanic, so there is a bit of a learning experience. People are still learning how to use and how to counter this card, so I feel like over time that win percentage will drop for sure. However, in my opinion, I think this is our first kind of like good new balanced card release in a very long time. When you look at the past couple of new card releases, there is definitely a track record of releasing underpowered, weak cards and then waiting several months to buff them. Obviously, the verdict is still out on the Goblin Giant. I think it could use a small buff. But when you look at the past several card releases, Goblin Giant, Recruit, Snowball, even the Royal Hogs were weak upon release. They have this tendency recently to be releasing new cards that are weak and then buffing them several months later. And in the case of the Recruits, 6 months, half a year to buff the card, which is crazy. So I gotta say, guys, it is definitely a breath of fresh air to have a new strong card release. I personally feel like it is a perfectly balanced card. Obviously, that's only with 1 day of actually using it. So maybe a week from now, we realize that it's actually brokenly overpowered or a bit weak. But as of right now, I feel like this card right here is a pretty good and balanced card, and I'm definitely excited to have it in the meta. Anyways, guys, that is the end of the video. It went on a lot longer than I thought it would. I'm sorry for rambling so much, but I wanted to do things a bit differently today and actually have the numbers to support what I wanted to say. What I want you guys to do right now is leave your feedback on anything on my list. Do you think I'm an absolute nut job? Am I crazy for recommending to buff the Hog Rider? Do you disagree with that entirely? What is your own buff or nerf wish list? What do you want to see changed in the November balance update? Let me know, guys, in the comments down below. And once again here, I'm sorry for suggesting buff the Hog Rider, but like I said, guys, the numbers don't lie. The win percentages are low, and it could use some love. Anyways, guys, that's the end of the video. Really hope you enjoyed it. If you did, make sure to leave a like, subscribe for more Clash Royale content. Thank you so much for watching, guys. We'll see you in the next one.